Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Hey, what's going on, everybody? So, just a quick update. We are about 97,000 downloads away from hitting that million mark. And it's pretty amazing to me to look at these numbers and see that we are closing in on 1 million total downloads. And all I could say is thank you guys so much for supporting the podcast the way you have. Downloading it, interacting with me, getting the message out. It's been an unreal ride. And I've said it a million times. This podcast was never meant to be anything like it is now. Originally, it was me and my producer, Lee. We knew something was wrong with what went on with this case from the very beginning. So we decided to start this podcast just to talk to our friends, basically, and people we know. And it turned into something completely different. And to be honest with you, it's turned me into a completely different person. I had a lot of viewpoints that were pretty ignorant before I started this podcast in regards to just how pervasive sex trafficking is in this country and in the world. I really didn't know anything about it, folks, to be honest with you. I knew that there was a problem, but again, I never dove in deep enough to truly understand the magnitude and the scope of what was going on. So this podcast has completely changed my outlook on things, and it reset my priorities. You know, mainly I was focused on going after government corruption, and still that's a huge part of what I do here on the podcast, right? But it opened my eyes to other things that were occurring right under our noses. And if I would have never started this podcast, Lee and I, back in August, I still wouldn't have any idea about just how deep this rot runs. So not only have, you folks educated yourselves listening to this podcast and, researching, but I too have grown and become more aware of just how serious this issue is. So again, I just want to thank you all for not only riding with me during this podcast, but also teaching me during this podcast, because as much as you say you have learned from me in the emails or on Twitter, I have learned just as much from all of you. And I'll tell you what, it has been a crazy ride. Sometimes a frustrating ride, a sad ride for sure. But it seems like, folks, that we have some light at the end of the tunnel here, right? Ghislaine Maxwell in jail. Jeffrey Epstein dead. Surviving Jeffrey Epstein is now currently airing, and they're putting a bit of a spotlight on the co-conspirators. So I think that can only add to them getting arrested eventually, hopefully soon, and wrapped up in this entire conspiracy. And that's just, every day we just keep it grinding and keep it going. And it's just been a wild ride to see where we started and to see where we are now. I don't know how anybody who has been following this case can't be a little bit excited about justice and about karma coming to smack all of Jeffrey Epstein's friends and co-conspirators right in the face. If you would have told me when we started this podcast that we would be sitting here not even a year from the October 1st date of the first daily drop, and we would have Maxwell in prison and the co-conspirators on the run, I would have told you that you were crazy. So it's been pretty interesting to see the way this whole entire thing has bloomed since we first started. And I will be forever grateful to all of you out there who have interacted with me, taken the time to send me emails, taken the time to correspond with me, and most importantly, giving up your most precious commodity, the minutes of your life, to spend them here with me on the Jeffrey Epstein Show. So again, thank you all. Closing in on 1 million, and I have some pretty exciting stuff planned for the rest of this year. The only problem for me is I live in Las Vegas, right? So for the whole entire summer, it's almost impossible to shoot videos in the locations I want to shoot outdoors because it's 115 degrees. But now that the weather's clearing up a little bit, we're going to have some videos to go along with the podcast as a companion piece, and we're going to start doing those in cool locations, right? I don't want to just sit in front of a green screen or sit in my office. I want to actually get out and shoot on trail and show you folks some of the places where I spend my time when I'm not here on the podcast. So we have that definitely to look forward to in the very near future. But until then, our article today is from Fox News, and it's Dr. Michael Baden, a year after Jeffrey Epstein's supposed suicide, is still questioning the official narrative, just like the rest of us. And, again, there will be people who say Dr. Baden is a fame seeker, he's this, he's that, he's whatever. But the fact of the matter is, this is a man who has been doing this for a very long time, a man who understands what a crime scene should look like, and understands what should occur when somebody dies, what the proper steps are for an investigation. So when he was hired and he came on board and had his counter narrative, I found it very, very interesting. And I thought that Dr. Michael Baden was probably the more, the more credible person out of the two people who we were dealing with, being the medical examiner for the state of New York and then Dr. Michael Baden. Because remember, the official narrative of Jeffrey Epstein's death is that it was a suicide. Barr was on that narrative. The Justice Department was on that narrative. So what would make you think that the medical examiner would not also be on that narrative? So again, I don't believe the official narrative ever when it comes to cases like this, especially these days. So I'm inclined to believe Dr. Michael Baden's version of this story unless evidence is presented that leads me in a different direction. The headline, Dr. Michael Baden on Jeffrey Epstein's death. Many questions still unanswered after 1 year. The author of this article is Talia Kaplan. There are still many unanswered questions surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's death 1 year after he was found unconscious in his New York City jail cell, forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Baden said on Fox and Friends on Monday. And Dr. Baden has been very on point with his message. He's been of this state of mind from the beginning in this case. He has said that this was a homicide, strangulation due to homicide, not self-imposed strangulation. And he laid out a bunch of facts as to why he thought that was the case. And we never saw anything like that from the medical examiner, right? Basically, what the state told us and what the federal government told us was that he committed suicide. That's it. Bill Barr saw the videos. Keep it moving. And I don't know about you, but I find that sort of nonsense absolutely unacceptable, and it must be questioned. Speaking on the 1-year anniversary of the sex offender's death in federal custody, Baden, a former New York City medical examiner who has worked on high-profile cases during a 5-decade medical career, outlined some of the questions that remained unanswered. Host Steve Doocy noted that Baden has made it very clear after he had examined Epstein's body and looked at the evidence that the evidence points to murder. And we definitely have been led down this road by Dr. Michael Baden and others, right, with the questions that they raised. Look, this isn't like some clown off the street they brought in here, right? This is a guy who knows his craft, who has been involved in hundreds or thousands of autopsies, who has seen plenty of suicides, and he says that this was not a suicide. He believes, in his professional opinion, that this was murder. And I tend to agree with him. Right, Baden said, citing the injuries to the neck. The 3 fractures in the neck are much more typical of strangulation than a suicidal hanging. Baden continued, adding that it is still unknown, a year later, what the position of Epstein's body was when he was found. And this is a big deal, right? There should have been crime scene pictures taken by the responding officers, by the boss who responded, the supervisor. Look, you have to take pictures of the crime scene, even if you think it's a suicide. Standard operating procedure is to take pictures. But they didn't do that. And you add that to all of the other nonsense surrounding this guy's death. And if you don't walk away having questions, then I worry for your mental stability, because this is just too much for us to swallow here, folks. Was he hanging? Was he on the ground? The noose that was found next to him, made from a sheet, we don't know yet what the DNA was on that noose. They should have had DNA a long time ago. Did it match Epstein or somebody else? We don't know if the door of the cell was locked or unlocked, Baden went on to say. And these are the things that they should have made a very apparent up front. There has been no transparency from the state when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein's supposed suicide. And that just doesn't sit well with me. They need to remember that they work for the taxpayer. All their secrets, their nonsense, their black sites, all of the BS that they do while nobody is looking has to be exposed. I have had enough of it. I have had enough of the government doing whatever they want, whenever they want, with no consequences. In an exclusive interview on Fox and Friends in October, Baden first revealed Epstein's body bore telltale signs of homicide. At the time of his death, Baden said the 66-year-old had 2 fractures on the left and right sides of his larynx, specifically the thyroid cartilage or Adam's apple, as well as 1 fracture on the left hyoid bone above the Adam's apple. And we know that stuff doesn't occur from a soft hanging the way Jeffrey Epstein did. Come on. The way that they explain that he supposedly hanged himself is such nonsense. I don't buy that for a second. And neither does Dr. Michael Baden. In January, Baden said on America's Newsroom that in hanging, one doesn't get 3 fractures of the Adam's apple and the bone, the hyoid bone above it. That just doesn't happen. And again, it really comes down to who do you believe, right? Who do you believe? Do you believe the medical examiner and Bill Barr? Or do you believe Dr. Michael Baden, who is somebody who might know a thing or two about situations like this? The bombshell claim by Baden last year reignited suspicions that surfaced immediately after Epstein, who was awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges involving underage girls, was discovered dead in his cell on August 10th. New York City medical examiner Barbara Sampson ruled the disgraced billionaire's cause of death to be a suicide by hanging. And it was pretty odd the way they went about that, right? First it was cause of death pending, then all of a sudden it's ruled suicide by hanging. No pictures of the crime scene, no evidence of that, conflicting reports from other medical examiners. Why is the government so incensed on shoving this narrative down our throats? That's the question we should be asking. What are they hiding, and who are they protecting? 2 federal corrections guards responsible for keeping watch over Epstein and other inmates on the night the multimillionaire pedophile allegedly hanged himself were arrested in November. And this sticks in my teeth as well. I don't like it. Now, I agree that the 2 guards that were on duty must face penalties for their disgraceful behavior at work. That's without a question. But should they be the only people facing felonies in this case? I mean, these 2 guards are facing felony charges before Sarah Kellen Vickers or Jean-Luc Brunel. It doesn't sit right with me, folks. Not at all. And the Justice Department needs to remedy this situation. Also, if you're going to charge those 2 guards, their supervisor has to be charged as well, and whoever was in charge of the prison as a whole that night. A grand jury indictment accused Tova Noel and Michael Thomas of neglecting their duties by failing to perform checks on Epstein every half hour as required, and of fabricating log entries to show they had. They were arrested and charged federally because they won't say what the condition of Epstein was or the condition of the cell was when they found him, Baden said on Monday. That's bizarre why the guards wouldn't tell anybody. Well, that is pretty interesting, right? And they need to talk about that. I think it's very important. But there were multiple people who responded to their call that Epstein was dead. So let's see what everybody has to say. Everybody who showed up needs to be subpoenaed, right? Everybody who answered the call that Epstein was hurt or dying or dead needs to be subpoenaed and become witnesses as to the state of the body when it was first found. These are very important facts to establish how somebody died. And the fact that none of these steps were followed, the fact that all of this protocol was broken and the only people in trouble are Tova Noel and Michael Thomas, it's just absolutely mind-boggling. They are now waiting federal trial and can get up to 15 years for not saying what the findings were when they found the body, he continued, noting that the guards were supposed to go back to trial in March, but the trial is still pending because of the, drumroll please, coronavirus. Boy, that's the excuse for everything, huh? I'm getting real tired of this coronavirus and it being used as an excuse for everything. Enough is enough already, okay? The guards who were working overtime because of staffing shortages when Epstein's body was found were placed on administrative leave while the FBI and the Justice Department's Inspector General investigate. The Inspector General is clawless, okay? He's worthless. Horowitz is not good at his job, and I don't even know why we even have somebody like the Inspector General around. They can't even prosecute. They can just make recommendations. It's such a joke of an office. We believe that it's a rush to judgment by the U.S. Attorney's Office that they decided to charge the lowest level employees on the totem pole for significant system failures by the Bureau of Prisons, Thomas attorney Montel Figgins told Fox Business in November. Figgins said his client, who has worked for the Bureau of Prisons for more than 10 years, is ready to fight this case and to expose the system that is trying to take away his livelihood. Well, good luck with that. I applaud you for trying to, fight back against the system. But my friend, you were part of the problem. You have to share in your portion of the guilt here. Now, again, I don't believe that the two guards are the only ones responsible. They should have some penalties. They should get charged. They should be in trouble. But what about the people above them? There is no accountability from the top. So how in the world do you expect these lowly prison guards to be accountable either? The whole entire environment at the Department of Corrections must change. The whole entire show has to be shaken up because obviously the way it functions now and the people in charge have no idea what they're doing. They're negligent and they truly have no care in the world about what goes on in these prisons. And I don't know about you folks, but I'm pretty sick of it. I'm sick of these people not doing their jobs. I'm sick of all of these bureaucrats who aren't even elected to offices, who get positioned in these offices, going around making things more difficult for everybody. I am just tired of all of it. And the only way it's ever going to change is if we demand our elected officials hold themselves to a higher standard. And I know that seems like a pie-in-the-sky kind of dream, but what else can we do? We have to make sure that we're sending people into these offices that are truly there for the benefit of the population as a whole. Because as you see within the Department of Corrections, it has nothing to do with people being accountable. What they're trying to do is throw the whole entire blame on these two lowly prison guards when we all know that the corruption and the stink and the rot starts at the very top. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. The links to this episode can be found in the description box. All right, everybody, we'll be back later on, and we'll do it all over again. I hope you all enjoy your day.